We are the Commonwealth Liberation Party, the party with a vision, the party with a dream, the party with a change, the party with the voice of the Queen, the party for your hope, identified with the Party for Dream actualization. Visit the future, visit the future, visit the future, and join the Commonwealth Liberation Party for your social ability, social dependency, social economic, social race, and social value. This is the last opportunity to make your hopes and aspirations a reality. For more information to participate, join or be a member, visit www.thecommonwealthliberationparty.org and register online, or send your name, email and address to 07480 258 777 for a membership registration form to be sent to you by post.
The last time we were here, we spoke about the IDC, and you clearly expressed your passion for what you believe and how the spirit talks to you and where the IDC is actually going. Since then, a lot has happened. The brainchild of the Commonwealth Liberation Party has come to fruition. It's been in fruition for a while now, but what we really want to get down to, what we really want to understand today is what the party is about, what the mandate is, and what was your inspiration for setting up a party? Why not just stick with the organisation of the IDC?
Well, first of all, the reason for the Commonwealth Liberation Party is to give the Commonwealth people and the nations of Commonwealth a voice in the international global justice system. Now, the problem is that the Commonwealth nation, they lack the education they need, and that has sort of made them to have actually sold the birthrights of their people. Like the Commonwealth nations, you know, when they go to the international World Summit to represent their countries, and you see them signing global contracts, they don't even know the implication of what they're getting themselves into. So the government of the Commonwealth, the people of the Commonwealth, first of all, don't understand what politics, governance and government is about. So the Commonwealth nation in entirety has failed their people. So for the first time, the Commonwealth Liberation Party is set up to be a voice for nations of Commonwealth, to be a voice for the government of Commonwealth, to be a voice for the people of the Commonwealth, to be a teacher for the government of Commonwealth, to teach them the mythology they lack, because when they got independence, the history that made United Kingdom to be a great nation today was never given to them. The history and the social studies they needed to make their government sustained and to be able to sustain the people was actually omitted from the freedom and sovereignty that was given to them. So for the first time, the Commonwealth nation now stands as a mother of government for the people of the Commonwealth.
So it sounds like the party has essentially been set up to almost accuse the world leaders and the current ideology which stands in this world, or current status quo, which people are used to. So what's the difference between your brainchild of the IDC and the party?
Okay, so first of all, the people of the world and the citizens of every nation see party as a ghostly operation. Now, nations of Commonwealth and the government of Commonwealth, their party is a flawed ideology. They have no ideology. If you look at the Nigerian government, the PDP, the APC, whatever all the parties they have, all you hear is every person wants to come into power. They don't even have an ideology. They have no principle. They have no theory. All you hear them say is programs. Or if you vote me into power, I'm going to build you roads. I'm going to build you schools. All that is nonsense.
With that said, however, would you not say anyone looking out from the outside of this and hearing this conversation, is this just not another party looking to get into power to give promises as well?
No, you see, a good government and a good party, you don't even need to come into power. The relevance of your existence will be a significance in people's life. What we believe in is, let us bring our goodies to the people, let us execute our mandate, and it is the choice of the people to vote us into power if they want to vote us into power. I am not fighting for any political position. I'm the role model of the Commonwealth Liberation Party, but this government I have created is one in a million. This is not the regular kind of political party where you bring money and then the party members vote you in and then they decide who they have to give the ticket to. This party is about education. You go to the IDC website, you read the doctrine, you know what the ideology is about, you come and sit for exam. When you pass our exams, we give you a ticket to contest for any political post you want to contest for, and that is what it is. But what I want to use this forum to teach the people is that for the first time, the people of the world needs to be wise. 60 years of European governance, British Empire, giving freedom to their colonies. They had not given them the education they actually needed to sustain a government that can be able to help the people. The Commonwealth nations and the Commonwealth parties don't know that party is about an ideology. Hitler had an ideology. Stalin has an ideology. Now, when you are voting people into power, the first question you need to ask your leaders, what is your ideology? What is your principle? What is your theory? And what are your discipline? When a leader comes into power and says to you, you know what, if you vote us into power, we're going to give you roads, we're going to give you schools, we're going to give you food, we're going to give you money, it actually means nothing. Because what they're actually saying to you, vote me into power and make me your money managers. Because they are coming, they are just like you. When they come into power, you have actually given them the mandate. So when they come into, if somebody says to you, I'm going to build you schools, he has no money of his own. There's a national treasury that the nation's wealth is saved into. So when you vote this will into power, you're actually voting people to come and manage manage the state of authority and manage the finance of the nation. But look at the Conservative Party. The name Conservative, what does it tell you? It tells you about economization. So if Conservative comes and say, vote us into power, the first thing you want to ask the Cameron, what is your ideology? The ideology is about conservation. If you vote a conservative government into power, you're not going to get anything, because all they want to do is to continue to shrink until they shrink you to death. Nothing is going to come out. Now, if you look at the Labour Party, what is the ideology? Labour Party is about labor force. Labour is all about putting people to work. Work, earn, and I take. Work, earn, and I take. So people should know what they're getting themselves into. Don't just blindly, it's going to be conservative government, it's going to be Labour. Labour government doesn't even need to be in power. Show the people what you can do for them. Don't wait for the people to vote you into power to start spending the people's money. You're talking about social security, benefits. Rooney, as a footballer, earns £350,000 a week. And you're sitting down there giving somebody £70 a week, 150. What are they going to do with that? I live in Westminster. I know how much my house rent goes. I pay more than £10,000 a month for house rent. Much as I see the house rent as hefty as £10,000 a month, there are some houses in Westminster that goes for £150,000 a month. Government officials are living there. But the houses for the ordinary people goes for £500 a month. Not even up to 1/10 of the money the government are paying to live in those mansions. And they are there deceiving the people, we'll give you this, we'll give you benefit. It's all nonsense. What it is that you come into power, you are there to manage. The people should know that when they vote government into power, these boys that you call government officials, they're actually nobody. They're just like yourself. So when it becomes a political matter, they want to come into power and they want to be the headship of money managers. So when you vote them into power, they're actually giving you nothing. They're coming to manage your resources. But for the first time, the world should start understanding that any party you vote into office, these people are coming to execute what goes on in their head. So if you say tomorrow, I'm going to revote David Cameron back in power, what you're actually voting into power, what goes on in David Cameron's head, not what he does. what goes on in his head. And what goes on in his head is going to be about his background. How was he trained? Was he from a poor home? Was he from a rich home? If he's from a poor home, that means he was never used to seeing money. So if you vote him into power, he knows that once upon a time, he was not even able to feed himself. Depends on the background. Now, if he's from a rich home, and you now vote him into power, you know you're going to have plenty and plenty and plenty, because you are used to high life, and what he wants for himself is what he's going to want for the people. So for the first time, today's topic is about every party must have an ideology. And what is the ideology of your leader? Buhari, Nigerian president, what is his ideology? He's an ex-military officer. He was trained as a military man to be a killer machine. So what is he going to think about the people? When the people misbehave, all he thinks about, let me kill them, let me waste them, let me kill them. Because that's what goes on in his head. Every man is built up in what goes on in their head and not what they do.
Wouldn't you argue, though, that that then eventually becomes their ideology? For example, you talk about David Cameron, the Labour Party, and other parties and so forth. Now, yeah, fine, in terms of their party and their party policies, policy is obviously different from ideology. The ideology from a conservative point of view would be right-wing, and the ideology extends from laissez-faire to non-interventionist and keeping corporation tax low and commerce. Whereas if you're looking at the ideology of Labour and Liberal Democrats, for example, a left-wing ideology of socialism, in extreme cases communism, and distribution of wealth. So wouldn't you say these parties actually do have an ideology, but they've just failed to execute them?
No, you see, first of all, if I take, okay, let me teach two examples, conservative and Labour. Okay. Now, if the people were to put them in a boxing ring, and whose ideology is better? Conservative is conservation. Labour is workforce. The good thing is that every man wants to work. Dignify them, give them job, pay their wage. Now, it now depends in terms of the wage they earn. How much taxation do you get of them? Do you overtax them? If a man has to work £100, how much should the government get out of that man's wage? It should not more than 5%. Somebody makes £100 from hard job, you have to take 5%. You don't take 20%. You take 20% on VAT, nonsense. You take 20% on council tax, 20% on income tax, 20% on... everybody in this country actually doesn't have a life. Everybody really needs to wake up and stand for their freedom. You have to, there are a lot of taxes in this country, and I think they are shrinking people to death.
But everyone needs to pay their way. Everyone needs to pay
listen to me, my dear. The government has the people to manage. Our party believes in social dependency, social pluralism, social economic, social race, social dependency. Okay? A good government, like me and you now, everybody are not bound to be intelligent, okay? Some are going to be wiser than some are going to be gullible, some are going to be foolish, some are going to be stupid, some are going to be idiotic, some are going to be useless, some are going to be mad, and then some are going to be eccentric, and some are going to be some are going to be genius, okay? Now, in a system like United Kingdom, many things are totally not correct because they have lost their mythology, they've lost insight about their social studies, they've lost their political mythology.
Speaking of which, let's talk a little bit about history, right? Before
Okay.
we jump into kind of the policies and the mandates and the principles of the party, your party, you often phrase it like you just did in terms of a party having lost their way, lost their mythology, lost the ideology, or not executing an ideology. When was it okay, and when did it become corrupted?
Well, first of all, Queen Elizabeth didn't have a successor, so she had a relative of her who became the king, and he felt that kings and queens were meant to rule, and he went into war with Parliament and he was beheaded. So I think everything lost to the winds. So after 16th century, all the aristocrats were already fading away. So the problem actually started when all the aristocrats faded away. So what you have right now, the English I speak with you right now is the broken English of the English of the aristocrats. Okay, so but what you have right now is that these are Boy Scouts. These boys in power are not generals. For them to be a general, they have to be a fighter. For them to be a fighter, they have to be ready to pay their life for debts. But these boys, like David Cameron and even the Labour leader, they are noisemakers.
So monarchy is better than democracy?
You see, every nation that has a monarchy is a blessed nation, because kings and queens are meant to rule. They are choosing. The fact that some monarchy chose to be tyrants just depends on every person's upbringing, and at every point when they fall out with reality, and at times some lose reality by what happens, events that cripple in their life, or depends on the kind of association, you know, they mingle with. But what we really want to address in this country is that for the first time, the colored people have to wake up. They've come to this country as willingly slaves. Nobody actually would come to a foreign land and decide to want to settle down. If you want to come to United Kingdom, for the past 20, 30 years, the only way to come to this country is to get married to a British citizen before they let you stay. Now that is nonsense, because every migrant who comes to this country only came to this country because their government cannot sustain them. So when they come to this country, they have their wives and children and girlfriends. They must have promised, I'm going on a voyage, I'll be back soon. Now they come to this land, the laws, the alien laws and the sham laws made by these Boy Scouts. These Boy Scouts who don't even know the records their grandfathers and ancestors have set down that has made United Kingdom the great nation today. These Boy Scouts, I call them the Boy Scouts because the boys in government are Boy Scouts because they don't know anything until they begin to execute policies to dignify humans. Then I'll give them the title of generals. But until humans are dignified, in my eye and in my policy and in my ideal, I call them Boy Scouts. David Cameron is a Boy Scout. The head of Labour Party is a Boy Scout. Until they begin, let them stop talking about everything they talk in Parliament is we're going to increase this, we're going to make you buy your first home. Everything should be free. It's social dependency. What you give to the people, it's nothing. Wanting the people to vote you in and you making promises to give them something is nothing, because you're actually giving them what you don't have. What you're actually giving them is what they own. So don't say to them, we will increase income, we will reduce income tax, we will give council housing. It's not a favor. You yourself don't even have. The only difference is that you are intelligent than them. So you are able to speak English and use English to understand the economy ratio of money treasury. That doesn't mean you're intelligent.
No, not at all. I mean, so what you're kind of getting at here is, let's say the Commonwealth Liberation Party were to be elected into power, it is simply giving back, rightfully so, to the people what is already theirs, as you kind of put it. So with that said then, what would be the top priorities for the party, not only from a campaign point of view before they got into power, but let's say they did get into power. Let's say you do, tomorrow, you know, you're in Parliament and you're in power. What are the top policies that you bring in immediately to change?
First of all, the top policies, first of all, we're going to bring in is what is called prison reform. We're going to start with prisoners' amnesty. Okay? Criminals are not criminals. What is called criminals? Those who defy the orders of what the system see as the bad, you know, from the good. So the interesting thing is that the Commonwealth Liberation Party actually has the values and the British ancient rights, like upholding the values of the law of Magna Carta, upholding the values of Queen Elizabeth I, the mother of the Commonwealth nation herself, who founded the Commonwealth nation and sent sailors on voyage. If we come into power, which that is not questionable, because I have created a government. I am spiritually divine. What I mean, it is nobody can in this world today. I'm the biggest brain. Nobody can compete with me because I'm floating in a different realm. What I think is sense. What the boys think is vanity. All I want for every man is goodness and human dignity. I will not be surprised when the boys in Conservative will start coming to the Commonwealth Liberation Party. I will not be surprised when the boys in Labour and other political parties are going to start joining the Commonwealth Liberation Party, because these boys are they genuinely want to serve humanely, but they have no ideology. And what is an ideology? Ideology, you don't pick ideology from the street. It is something like, it's genuism. To have an ideology people are going to buy into is about genuism. You don't just wake up. It's not taught in the school. Yes, you may have the elementary, but it's not taught in the school. So what I really want to address in this country, first of all, is taxation. I don't buy the current way the tax system is run. The tax system is killing every citizen of this country. Until David Cameron and the men who decide how the tax should go, until they begin, the tax man does not even know the pain of the tax. He never pays tax. You can take council tax, car tax, income tax, MOT, everything is tax, 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 tax. The people are never going to have a rest for themselves. That means they are going to work till death. Even when they die and they have their house, the houses are still going to be taxed. How can you tax a man 20% of his income? Can you, if you were to be, the only way the government, when I mean the government, the boys, the Boy Scouts who are voted into power, the only way they can actually understand the pains on the alien policies they make is when they begin to enact the law of legal compromise. Do unto others what you want others to do unto you. Feel the pain, make a law. If you make a law and say social services can take somebody's children because the mother is not worthy to be a mother, the first thing you would do is let them take your child first of all for 1 month and see how you're going to feel the pain. Then you'll be able to know if the law makes sense or the law doesn't make sense. So many things we're going to change. We want to abolish prison. I know many people are not going to like me because in prison, many entrepreneurs have invested in prison. You know, because the more people are jailed and put in prison, the more they get their income. The more those in prison are cooking. So prison is becoming a big business. But if I'm going to abolish the prison, I'm going to settle them with their investments.
Okay, so let's take a little bit of a step back from that. We'll touch on the prison point in a minute, because it's obviously a very bold statement. Let's talk of it on a kind of a slightly smaller scale in terms of legal compromise in, let's say, the social care industry. If a child, for example, is perceived to be being abused by whoever it may be, their parents, their guardians, and a current day, as it stands, a social care worker or the social services can intervene and take that child away, well, how would you change that? I mean, if a child is being abused, then what do we do to rectify that?
First of all, we know that Britain of 1935, it was all about academy. Children are flogged, children are spanked. Who brought this sham law? Well, parents can't beat their children. That is why the children don't even have control. There's a difference between discipline and abuse. What normally would happen is discipline. When does discipline become an abuse? So I can remember many things offhand, but in terms of the family aspect of reform, we have actually, the Commonwealth Liberation Party has actually created positive reforms on how parents can actually go for training, go to do some courses, which gives them the power to discipline their children. So there are some kind of courses you do for like 6 months or 1 year. We will as soon as that aspect of deciding how the board will manage the system, okay, parents are given license to discipline their children. Once they go through the program for 1 year, I've forgotten the name of head now, maybe in the second conversation I'll be able to go through that and tell you what plans we have. But parents go through training for like 6 months or 1 year and they're given certificates. So that certificate actually gives them license to discipline that child.
No, absolutely. I mean, and I'm glad you said that actually, because there's so much here to talk about. I mean, we could make a dozen videos just on each policy, but sticking with kind of prisons reform, for example, we touched on this in the last video that you and I made together, whereby I tried to, well, I said to yourself that it sounds like what you're trying to do is a government based on knowledge and education, which you agreed with. Now, if we're looking at kind of prisoners, and I think I asked you this question then, but I'll ask you again now because it's specifically down to prisons reform. You have prisoners who commit crimes, really horrible atrocities, but sometimes there's no reasoning behind it. How do you educate a man who's committed a crime who doesn't want to be educated?
No, first of all, we are going, in terms of prison reform, we're going to start introducing what you call judges' housemanship. First of all, the people who sit and make law, the only way that you see, you don't just sit down and make laws. When you cannot test a law upon yourself, it becomes a sham law. If Prime Minister says, you know what, we're going to build prisons we're going to build more prisons and invest in more prisons. For Prime Minister to prove the test of sustenance in prison, I think he should volunteer to go to prison for 100 days. Then if he can sustain being in prison for 100 days, he can happily clap his hand. I was there. It's not what you think it was. I was there. Then the judge. Judges don't just wake up, I want to be a judge. Because you're judging not your family. But if your family had to be judged by another judge, what do you think the judge is going to say? Oh, pardon. But because you don't feel the pain when it's not part of you. So we're going to introduce judges' housemanship. Judges are going to spend 6 months prison housemanship for us to know whether they can crack down. So that even when the government passes law and say 10 years imprisonment, the judges for the first time will use common sense. 10 years is not acceptable. Because I have been there for 1 day.
Do you
so,
yeah? Sorry to interrupt. Do you think, does any part of you believe, however, that the people who receive life sentences, 10 years imprisonment for whatever reason, that they quite frankly just deserve it?
You see, first of all, what are criminals? No, but you know what they call criminals? Criminals is actually nothing. It's just a word.
Yes, it's someone who essentially breaks a law which is man-made.
Thank you. So man makes a law. The Boy Scouts makes a law. But you see, unfortunately, these governments in office are called Boy Scout by me. So from today, everybody should know what their titles are. They're Boy Scouts. Until they begin to value humans and dignify humans, then they become generous. Do you understand me? So David Cameron today, he's a Boy Scout. Until he begins to dignify the Commonwealth people, until he goes back and study his mythology and realize that the Commonwealth nation has a right in this country, has a birthright in this country, David Cameron is a Boy Scout. One. Now, what you must understand is that we have been untruthful to ourselves, and it's nobody's fault. It is what we were taught in school. The real knowledge that would make us to be humans, that would make us to understand each other, we're never taught there. That's why you find that people go to school and they become unemployed, because they didn't teach them what would sustain them to be able to propagate their destiny or put their destiny in their hands. So the problem is, a man you call a criminal is not a criminal. The society he lives in and the laws made by the government has made them to be criminals. If the government gives them good home, don't give them a shank home. I live in Westminster. My sitting room is like a 3-bedroom apartment. But I remember when I was living in one of those, you know, I was never living in the ghetto, but when I was living amidst the ordinary people, what I call a sitting room right now for me is a 3-bedroom house. Just the parlor for me, that my sitting room is like a 3-bedroom apartment. But when I was living in the areas of the common people, that sitting room that I call a 3-bedroom now is what that sitting room that I call just a 1 room is what they call a 3-bedroom. So the government, for the first time, needs to be fair and sincere to themselves. The only thing the government should understand is that I'm the best friend of everybody. Even when I have to criticize their stupidity, gullibility, foolishness, and idiotic, I'm still ready to receive them as a mother and teach them the knowledge they lack, because they don't even know what they're doing. So I have no reason to be angry with anybody. I just speak the truth. I'm a messenger of truth. I speak the truth. I don't care who you are. Even with a gun in my head will not take away my dignity. So I speak the truth because I am the teacher that teaches the universal knowledge that was never in the syllabus of every person. Every person till date is an educated illiterate. No politics of this era has an ideology. And even when they are heading this party, they don't even understand the mythology on which their party was founded upon. Every party is set up on an ideology. And when you are voting leaders into power, it's always good to check their background. It's always good to check their history. It's always good to know what goes on in their head, not the promises they say to you. Because if you know what goes on in their head, that means that when they come into power, it's what goes on in their head they are going to execute. So the problem is that human beings are called criminals. I see Nigerian government wasting innocent lives away. They call them criminals, they parade them, they call them thieves. But the government are actually the thieves. Because with the pen and the biro, David Cameron can move £1 million into his account. But the ordinary man who goes to steal £300 is put in prison for 3 years. But they are sitting there in the office signing the check. So who is a thief? Because one is in power, stealing with the pen, in the name of, oh, I'm the head of the people, and one person that cannot even feed himself goes and steals. So many people who have committed crimes of robbery, theft, if you actually take a look at why they committed those offenses, they just wanted to sustain themselves. Yeah. Some of them, their friends are driving flashy cars. They also want to drive flashy cars. But the money you give them is not enough to buy them flashy cars. Give them cars, give them house, give them money. They have a stake in this authority.
So what you're saying is, again, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you're making almost the assumption that the crimes committed by people for a reason, often, in your words, are based on the motivation of money, lack of resource, lack of opportunity. Therefore, I go out to commit a crime in order to grasp that opportunity, that money, or that car, like you say, for example. Hence why you're saying give them the car, give them the house. But coming back to my question, what if it's not about money? What if it's not about opportunity? What if I just want to go down the street because I don't like someone and shoot them in the head? Then what does the party do, and how does it act to such mindless situations and violence?
Okay, so the first thing, like I would always say, not the action of a man. If you judge a man by their action, you're going to hate them. You have to understand what propelled that action. Until you understand what propelled the action, you will not know what kind of sentence to pass on to them. So that whatever their offenses are, even when a criminal is caught red-handed, you see they have a passion. They are so sorry. They are humans. Oh, I'm not going to do it again. I've learned my lesson. Once the human mind is tortured, you see the reality in them. They are sober. So if such soberness can come out of them, then I think there should be pardon. And that is where the legal compromise comes in. I'm not saying there's not going to be prison, but it has to be called, you know, a rehabilitation academy.
Okay, so perfect. So what you're trying to do is there's a big debate that happens in this country, and it's a very well-known statistic that most offenders, I don't know the statistic, but I know the gist of it, where if an individual goes into prison, the chance of him coming out and re-offending is very high. Therefore, it begs the question of what actually happens in prison. Are you punishing them or are you rehabilitating them? So your philosophy is about, like it always has been, and we deciphered this in the last video, it's about rehabilitation. More importantly, it's about education.
The maximum you can put a man in prison is 5 years. 5 years. 5 years.
And what happens in those 5? What hopefully happens in those 5 years?
A lot of things are going to happen because they're going to change. 1 day of a man's freedom is a lot. So, true. 1 day of a man's freedom is a lot. The only thing is that these governments, you know, governments in power. So what we need to first of all correct is to teach the government and the people that every government who you vote into power, forget their promises. Oh, we're going to give you income tax, we're going to do this. They are doing nothing. What they're actually doing is coming into power to be your money managers. But what you must ask them, what is your ideology? All they front is programs. I build house, I build bridge, I give this. They have nothing. They have nothing. And that is what it is. So, but you must have an ideology. What is an ideology? For example, if every ideology should be something that has integrity. There are some sham ideologies, like the ideology the conservative government is fronting. Kick out all the black people. The EU can come, the blacks cannot come. You see? So what is going on in their minds? A lot of things are going on in their mind. But if I have to start exposing the atrocity, you know, it's going to make a lot of people to want to think, hey, something is happening here. The only reason why conservative government is driving the colored people away is because, first of all, they are cowards. I don't see a reason why they're having association with the EU people. Because the EU actually almost destroyed the United Kingdom in the Second World War. True. Okay? So if the Americans had not come, there would not be United Kingdom. But why don't they like the black people? Why are they driving the black people away? Because it is hateism. For the first time, I say to people, forget racism. It's not racism, it's hateism. Say to every man who denies you job, why do you hate me? They're going to say, oh, I don't hate you. Prove you don't hate me. If you don't hate me, why are you telling me? Bring your passport. But if I come in a white skin, oh, you want a job? Take the job. So it's hateism. If you don't hate me, then why are you taking my babies? How many white babies did they take away? Unless the ones who are really cocoa in their head. But every black baby is being taken away because they love to destroy the black families. So many things are not just right. So for the first time, I know that the boys in power, the Boy Scouts in power currently, they don't even know what they are doing. And the greatest mistake is that let them hear me. When they hear me, their conscience would judge them. They would actually, the sad thing is that they don't know that this is hateism. They just thought it's a fashion. You know, we don't want the Commonwealth nation. You know, you have to earn 35,000. Who's going to give you a job of 35,000? You cannot even get a job of 18,000. You want them to go and get 35,000. So in a nutshell, you want to kick them out of your so you hate them. Let the Cameron come to me and look into my face and say to me, I don't hate them.
Brilliant. What we're going to do is we're going to take a very quick break, and then what I'm glad you ended it on that note just before we have a little bit of a break, because it leads us nicely into the next part of our conversation, which is somewhat starting off and finishing off what I talked about in terms of the Mental Health Act, which is a very important, crucial part of the party's policies, going into social injustice and specifically now how the Commonwealth people have actually experienced this injustice and why in essence the Commonwealth Liberation Party was set up to battle this injustice, and you've already touched upon it. So